The screams tore through the void like claws on metal, each transmission carrying the desperate terror of humans fighting for their lives. Admiral Jack Reynolds stood frozen in the command center of Terra Station, his coffee growing cold as the horror unfolded through the speakers. "Mayday, Mayday. This is Captain Maria Santos of the mining freighter Golden Horizon. They're tearing us apart." Her voice cracked with raw panic. "The Vexti pirates? They're using some kind of bioweapons. God, they're boarding us." My crew is static, consumed her words, but the silence that followed was somehow worse. Then her screams. Reynolds had heard death before. 20 years in the Terran Navy, from the Martian Rebellion to the Europa mining wars, had taught him to recognize when good people were about to die. But this was different. This was hunting season, and humans were the prey. Lieutenant Amy Carter's hands trembled as she worked her console, her usually steady voice cracking like thin ice. "Sir, I'm detecting 47 civilian vessels under attack in the Outer Rim. Mining ships, colony transports, even a medical frigate." She paused, her face going pale. "They're all broadcasting distress signals. The Vexti fleet has them completely surrounded." The tactical display painted a picture that made Reynolds' stomach turn. Red dots representing human ships clustered together like frightened sheep, while green markers Vexti bioships circled them like hungry wolves. Each red dot represented hundreds of lives. Families, children, people who had left Earth seeking a better future among the stars. To find monsters waiting in the dark. "How long since the attacks began?" Reynolds asked, though he already dreaded the answer. "First distress signal came in 6 hours ago, sir. They've been systematically hunting our people across 3 star systems." Carter's voice broke completely. "The New Detroit went silent 20 minutes ago. It's 1,200 colonists, including ... She couldn't finish. Reynolds didn't need her to. The New Detroit had been carrying refugee families from the overcrowded inner worlds. Kids who had never seen a real sky, who thought space was an adventure instead of a graveyard. Here's the thing about being human, we're pack animals. Always have been. Touch one of us, and you might get away with it. But start hunting us like animals. That's when you discover why Earth is classified as a Class 12 death. World in the Galactic Registry. Reynolds clenched his fists until his knuckles went white, feeling the familiar rage building in his chest. The same rage that had driven humanity to conquer every hostile environment on Earth, from the deepest oceans to the highest peaks. The Vexti had been hunting human colonists for months, while the Galactic Council held endless debates about proportional response and diplomatic solutions. Those alien bureaucrats sitting safely in their crystal towers didn't understand what they were dealing with. They saw humans as the newest members of the galactic community. Aggressive, perhaps, but ultimately manageable. They thought our tendency toward violence was a flaw to be corrected through proper guidance. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Sir," whispered Ensign Tom Bradley from the communications station, "we're receiving another transmission. It's from the Bright Hope. They're begging us to send help." The voice that crackled through the speakers belonged to a child, maybe 10 years old, crying for his mother while explosions thundered in the background. Reynolds closed his eyes, but he couldn't shut out the sound of innocents being murdered. That's when something fundamental shifted in the room. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by something else, something that had kept humanity alive through ice ages, plagues, and world wars. Cold, calculating fury. You know what the difference is between humans and every other species in the galaxy? They evolved on garden worlds where the biggest threat was maybe a bad storm or a territorial dispute over resources. We evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill us every single day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, climate shifts that could wipe out entire civilizations. Earth threw everything it had at us. And we didn't just survive, we thrived. We turned every challenge into a weapon, every setback into a comeback story. Reynolds opened his eyes, and Carter actually took a step back from the look she saw there. This wasn't the diplomatic officer who attended Galactic Council meetings. This was something older, something forged in the crucible of a death world. "Signal Battle Group Alpha," he said, his voice dropping to a growl that promised violence. "Wake up the Thunderstrike. Vengeance, Predator, and Executioner. Names alone should have been a warning. While other species named their ships after flowers and philosophical concepts, humans chose names that promised pain, Sir Carter said hesitantly. The Galactic Council specifically ordered us not to engage without the Galactic Council, Reynolds interrupted. Can file a complaint after we're done? He turned to face the holographic display showing the massacre in progress. We're going to show these alien scum what happens when you hunt humans. But even as the battle station's alarms began to wail, even as 4 of humanity's deadliest warships began powering up their engines, Reynolds knew they might already be too late.
Our space was vast, and the Vexti had hours to work their evil.
The question wasn't whether they could save everyone, it was whether they could save anyone at all. The darkness of space suddenly erupted with the fury of 4 emerging leviathans. The Terran war fleet materialized from hyperspace like death itself had come calling. Their hulls still crackling with dimensional energy as reality bent around. Their massive forms, Captain Mike Harrison gripped the armrests of his command chair aboard the Thunderstrike, watching his tactical display explode into a constellation of hostile contacts. 23 years of combat experience. From the brutal street fighting on Titan to the siege of New Geneva, and he'd never seen anything like this. Sweet mother of ... Sin Tommy Brooks' voice died in his throat as the scanner readings updated. Jesus Christ, Captain. There's got to be 200 pirate ships out there, maybe more. The Vexti fleet stretched across space like a living nightmare. Their bioships pulsed with sickly green bioluminescence, organic hulls breathing in the vacuum as if the void itself was their natural habitat. Each vessel looked like it had been grown, rather than built, twisted spines of cartilage and bone, writhing with neural pathways that glowed like infected veins, and there trapped in the center, like flies in a spider's web, were the human ships. What was left of them anyway? Harrison felt his jaw clench as he counted the dark holes floating dead in space. The New Detroit, the Bright Hope, a medical frigate Mercy that had been carrying medicine to the outer colonies. Dozens of vessels that had been full of life just hours ago, now nothing but coffins drifting in the black. But some were still alive. He could see the desperate flicker of emergency lights, the brief flashes of jury-rigged weapons trying to hold off the inevitable. Families huddled in cargo holds, parents shielding their children while monsters closed in from all sides. Captain, Lieutenant Sarah Walsh called from the sensor station, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. I'm reading life signs on 17 vessels. They're still fighting. Still fighting. That was humanity in 3 words right there. Even surrounded, even outgunned, 100 to 1. Even facing an enemy that literally ate their victims alive. Humans kept swinging until the last breath left their bodies. You want to know something funny about predators? They always assume they're at the top of the food chain. The Vexti had spent millennia hunting the soft, civilized species of the inner world's beings who surrendered at the first sign of violence, who valued their individual lives more than their collective survival. They had no idea they'd just cornered a pack of wolves. Admiral Reynolds' voice cut through the cum channels. Like a blade forged in nuclear fire. All ships, weapons free. Show them why Earth is called a death world. The response was immediate and absolute. For human warships, each one a concentrated expression of 10,000 years of human ingenuity applied to the art of killing. Opened fire simultaneously. The Thunderstrike led the charge, her main railgun spitting depleted uranium slugs at 20% the speed of light. The projectiles crossed the battlefield in seconds, punching through Vexti bioarmor like it was tissue paper. One slug hit a pirate cruiser amidships and simply erased it, the kinetic energy converting matter to plasma in an instant of brilliant annihilation. Direct hit on Target 7, shouted Weapons Officer Jessica Martinez, her hands dancing across her console like a pianist playing Death's Symphony. Target eliminated. But the railguns were just the opening movement. The real orchestra of destruction came from the missile tubes. Thousands of projectiles erupted from the human ships. Not the simple explosive devices favored by other species, but quantum-linked smart weapons that thought and adapted in real time. Each missile carried an AI brain sophisticated enough to recognize friend from foe, to calculate optimal approach vectors, to make split-second decisions that would shame most organic strategists. The Vexti tried to intercept them with their bioplasma defense networks, but how do you shoot down a missile that can think faster than you can aim? The weapons weaved through defensive fire like dancers. Their trajectories impossible to predict, because they were being calculated by quantum processors that existed in 17 dimensions. Simultaneously, nuclear fire bloomed across the battlefield. As the missiles found their targets, not the crude fusion bombs of humanity's past, but clean antimatter warheads that converted matter directly into energy. Each detonation was a miniature star being born and dying in the space of microseconds. Holy hell, breathed Ensign Brooks, watching an entire wing of Vexti fighters vanish in a chain reaction of explosions. They're getting massacred, but the pirates weren't stupid, just arrogant. As their neat formations collapsed under the human assault, they adapted with the desperate cunning of cornered animals. If they couldn't win, they'd take as many humans with them as possible. Sir, Lieutenant Martinez's voice cracked with urgency. Enemy flagship is changing course. They're trying to ram the civilian ships. Harrison's blood turned to ice as he watched the massive Vexti bio-dreadnought, Isley, 3 times the size of his own vessel, begin accelerating toward the cluster of helpless human transports. Its bio-armor was scarred and burning, whole sections of its hull blown away by human fire. Yes. But it still had enough mass to smash through the civilian vessels like a bowling ball through paper. The thing about revenge is that it tastes sweetest. When served with a side of spite, the Vexti commander knew he was beaten, knew his fleet was being systematically annihilated by forces he'd never imagined. But if he was going to die, he'd make sure to take a few thousand human civilians with him. That's when Admiral Reynolds smiled a cold, predatory expression that would have made a great white shark proud. Deploy the Reapers. Those 2 words sent a chill through every human on the bridge, because they all knew what was coming next. The Reapers weren't just weapons, they were nightmares given digital form, the result of what happened when humanity's best military minds asked a simple question. What if we could build robots that were better at killing than we are? The answer was about to paint the void with alien blood. The launch bays of the human warships suddenly erupted like mechanical volcanoes, spewing forth a tide of death that had never been seen in galactic warfare. Thousands upon thousands of Reaper combat drones poured into space like a metallic plague, each one no larger than a fighter craft but packed with enough artificial intelligence and destructive capability to level a city block. Commander? David Thompson felt the neural interface cables dig deeper into his skull as his consciousness expanded. Across the drone network, through 10,000 electronic eyes, he could see the battlefield in perfect clarity, every Vexti ship, every trapped human vessel. Every potential trajectory calculated and recalculated in micros. This was what separated humans from every other species in the galaxy. While aliens built bigger guns and thicker armor, humans built smarter weapons. Each Reaper drone carried the processing power of a small city, linked through quantum entanglement to a hive mind that could think faster than any organic brain. Jesus, whispered Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone, watching the tactical display. Filled with friendly contacts, it's like watching a swarm of angry wasps. But these weren't mindless insects. Each drone moved with deadly purpose, their sleek titanium composite hulls reflecting the glow of distant stars as they accelerated toward their targets. They didn't fly in formation like traditional fighters instead. They flowed like liquid metal, constantly shifting positions and patterns that would have driven organic pilots insane trying to follow. The Vexti made their first mistake by assuming human technology would be crude and straightforward. Their second mistake was about to get them all killed. Warlord Vexi, commanding the pirate fleet from his bio-dreadnought, watched the approaching swarm with growing unease. His tentacles writhed around the organic control surfaces of his ship. bioneural pathways pulsing with stress hormones as his primitive sensors tried to track targets that moved like ghosts. "Impossible," screamed over the communication channels, his voice distorting through the alien translation protocols. "Your machines fight like demons." He wasn't wrong. The Reapers moved with inhuman precision, calculating trajectories that defied conventional physics. They used gravitational slingshots around debris, employed microfusion bursts to change direction in ways that would have liquefied organic pilots, and communicated through encrypted quantum channels that updated their tactical awareness faster than the speed of light. But here's the thing that really terrified the Vex. The drones weren't just trying to destroy them. They were performing surgery. You see, most species approach combat like a brawl in a bar. Swing hard, swing often, hope you're the last one standing. Humans, we approach warfare like we approach everything else as a problem to be solved with maximum efficiency and minimum waste. The Vexti had made the critical error of taking human civilians hostage, thinking it would give them leverage. What they didn't understand was that humans had spent centuries perfecting urban warfare, fighting in environments where every building might contain innocent families, where every shot had to be precisely placed to avoid collateral damage. Reapers sliced through alien hull plating with molecular disruptors, weapons that broke apart matter at the atomic level, or creating surgical incisions that could disable enemy systems while leaving life support intact. They didn't just attack, they performed battlefield microsurgery, cutting away weapons systems and engine components with the precision of a neurosurgeon removing a brain tumor. Target acquired came the synthesized voice of Reaper Unit 7745 through Thompson's neural link, separating engine cluster from main hull, preserving life support for human prisoners in sectors 7 through 12. Thompson watched through the drone's sensors as it carved through a Vexti cruiser's bioarmor, its molecular blade following the natural seams in the alien ship's organic structure. Within seconds, the vessel's propulsion system was floating, free in space, leaving the pirates dead in the water, but their human captives unharmed. From the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Lisa Anderson coordinated the assault with the cold efficiency of a master chess player. Her enhanced reflexes courtesy of military neural implants that pushed human reaction times into superhuman territory, processed battlefield data in real time, identifying threats and opportunities faster than any organic mind should have been capable of. "Reaper Squadron 7, target their engine clusters," she commanded, her voice carrying across quantum channels to drones already accelerating toward their next victims. "I don't want those bastards dead in space, but keep the prisoner compartments intact." The beautiful, terrible thing about the Reaper assault was its absolute precision. While the Vexti pirates screamed and fired wildly with their bioplasma weapons, the human drones danced between their shots like deadly ballerinas, each movement calculated to achieve maximum tactical advantage. A trio of Reapers converged on a Vexti destroyer, their attack perfectly coordinated, despite the fact that they'd never trained together because they didn't need to. They shared a single tactical consciousness, 3 bodies controlled by one superintelligent mind that could process battlefield variables faster than any organic strategist. The first drone disabled the ship's weapons with a precisely placed molecular charge. Second severed its communication array, cutting it off from the rest of the pirate fleet. The third performed the most delicate operation of all, carving through the bulkheads surrounding the human prisoners while leaving their life support systems completely untouched. "My God," breathed Ensign Tommy Brooks from his station aboard. "The Thunderstrike. They're not just fighting, they're performing miracles." But the Vexti weren't giving up without a fight. Warlord Vexi, realizing that conventional tactics were useless against opponents who thought at the speed of light, ordered his remaining ships to implement a desperate strategy: initiate bioneural feedback. He shrieked to his subordinates, "Overload their machine minds." The alien ships began pulsing with a different kind of energy, not the focused violence of weapons, but the chaotic neural patterns of organic consciousness amplified to destructive levels. It was a technique that had worked against other species. AI systems, overwhelming their digital minds with the raw, logical fury of biological thought. Against human technology, It was like trying to stop a hurricane with a wet napkin. "Commander Thompson," came Admiral Reynolds' voice over the com, tinged with dark amusement. "Are you experiencing any interference from their neural attacks?" Thompson's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Sir, our A's were trained on human neural patterns. If they can handle the chaotic insanity of human consciousness, a few alien brainwaves aren't going to slow them down." Furial. Primal terror began creeping into the alien voices as their supposedly superior bioships fell before human ingenuity, like wheat before the scythe. These weren't the diplomatic weaklings they'd been hunting for months. These weren't the soft, civilized species that surrendered at the first sign of violence. These were apex predators protecting their pack. And the Vexti had just discovered why humans were the only species in the galaxy that referred to their home planet as a death world. With pride, instead of fear. But even as the Reaper drones carved through the pirate fleet with surgical precision, something was happening in the depths of space that would change everything, because the Vexti had one final, desperate card to play. The assault pods erupted from the human warships like bullets fired from the gods themselves, each one carrying 12 of humanity's finest killers toward their alien prey. Sergeant Robert Johnson felt the familiar weight of his power armor settle around him as the pod's interior lights shifted from green to amber. 30 seconds to impact, he bellowed over the cum system, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd survived 3 planetary invasions and the hellish urban warfare of the Luna City uprising. "Remember, people, these scum have been hunting our families for sport. No prisoners unless they surrender, and even then, make them earn it." The Marines around him checked their weapons one final time, each movement precise and economical. These weren't fresh recruits or weekend warriors. They were the elite of the elite, handpicked from Earth's most brutal conflicts and enhanced with technology that pushed human capability beyond all biological limits. The impact was like the fist of an angry god punching through reality itself. Johnson's pod hit the hull of a Vexti cruiser at 300 meters per second, its molecular, boring head chewing through bioarmor that had taken the aliens centuries to grow. The breach sealed itself behind them as they poured into the ship's corridors, their power armor automatically adjusting to the alien atmosphere. "Breach successful," Johnson reported, raising his assault rifle as the first Vexti defenders rounded the corner. "Time to show these bastards what happens when you hunt humans." The human soldiers hit the pirate vessels like a hurricane of death incarnate. So their power armor wasn't just protection, it was a technological marvel that incorporated every lesson learned from Earth's deadliest battlefields. Active camouflage made them nearly invisible. Servo-assisted muscles gave them the strength to tear through steel with their bare hands. And integrated weapon systems turned each Marine into a walking arsenal, but it was their tactics that truly separated them from every other military force in the galaxy. Corporal Rachel Williams moved through the alien corridors with the lethal grace of a predator that had evolved on a planet where everything wanted to kill you. Her assault rifle chattered in controlled bursts, each shot precisely placed to disable rather than destroy, because somewhere in this ship, human civilians were counting on her to keep them alive. "Contact front," she called over the squad channel, dropping behind cover as bioplasma bolts sizzled past her head. The Vexti were trying to establish a defensive position at a junction ahead, their tentacled forms writhing behind makeshift barriers. Here's something most species don't understand. About humans, we don't just adapt to our environment, we adapt our environment to us. While the aliens tried to fight in the corridors they knew, Williams was already changing the rules of engagement. She activated her armor's gecko grip systems and simply walked up the wall, her boots adhering to the organic surface as she flanked the alien position from an angle they'd never expected. Her rifle spoke 3 times and 3 pirates collapsed in pools of luminescent ichor. "Tango's down," she reported with professional calm, as if she hadn't just performed maneuvers that would have been impossible for any other species. Moving to secure the hostages, the Vexti tried to fight. Really, they did. But they devolved. As ambush predators on garden worlds, where the most dangerous thing they faced was maybe a territorial dispute over mating rights. Humans, we'd survived ice ages, plague outbreaks, predators with teeth like sabers and claws like knives. We turned warfare into an art form, then turned that art form into a science. Hostages secured on Deck 7, Williams reported, helping. A terrified human family stumbled toward the extraction point. The father had a plasma burn across his chest. The mother was clutching a crying infant, and 2 young children clung to her armor with desperate gratitude. "Thank you," the woman whispered, tears streaming down her face. We thought we were going to die." Williams' voice gentled as she activated her suit's medical scanner, checking the family for injuries. "Not on my watch, ma'am. You're safe now." This was why humans fought. Not for territory or resources or abstract political concepts, but for moments like this, for the chance to pull innocence back from the brink of hell and tell it that monsters couldn't win, not while humans drew breath. Meanwhile, 3 decks above, Colonel James Parker was writing his own chapter in the Encyclopedia of Alien Nightmares. The veteran Marine had led the assault on the Vexti flagship personally because some jobs were too important to delegate. His squad moved through the bioship's twisted corridors like death's own hunting party, their enhanced sensors mapping the alien vessel's layout in real time. "Command center is straight ahead," reported Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, her armor scanner painting targets through the organic walls, reading multiple life signs, including one massive signature that has to be their leader. Parker's smile was visible through his helmet's transparent aluminum faceplate, a cold, predatory expression that would have made a great white shark proud. Perfect. Time to cut off the head of this particular snake. The command center's biomechanical doors dilated like a dying eye as the humans approached, revealing a chamber that looked more like the inside of a living organism than a starship bridge. Nerve clusters pulsed along the walls, and in the center of it all sat Warlord Vexi on his command throne. The alien was massive even by Vexti's standards, his tentacles thick as tree trunks and scarred from 100 battles. Bioluminescent. Patches along his hide pulsed with rage as he faced the human intruders, his multiple eyes focusing on Parker with predatory intensity. "You cannot defeat us." Vexi shrieked, his voice carrying harmonics that would have driven most species to their knees in terror. "We are the apex hunters of the galaxy. We have devoured civilizations older than your pathetic species." Parker stepped forward, his rifle held casually at his side, and the absolute confidence in his movement was more terrifying than any weapon. Here was a predator that had been forged in the crucible of humanity's deadliest conflicts, enhanced with technology that pushed him beyond the limits of flesh and bone. "You know what's funny about apex predators?" Parker said conversationally, as if he were discussing the weather instead of facing down a creature that could literally tear him. "Apart with its bare tentacles, they're only apex until something meaner comes along." The warlord lunged forward with surprising speed, his bio-enhanced muscles propelling his massive form across the command chamber, those same tentacles that had strangled the life from countless victims reached out to crush this insolent human who dared challenge his supremacy. Parker's laugh was cold as winter vacuum. "You picked the wrong prey." His rifle spoke once, a single, perfectly aimed shot that punched through alien hide and bone to find the neural cluster that controlled Vexhi's motor functions. The massive pirate leader collapsed in a spreading pool of luminescent ichor, his tentacles spasming once before going still. "Flagship secured," Parker reported over the comm, stepping over the alien corpse without a second glance. "All remaining Vexti forces are surrendering." But even as victory seemed assured, Parker's enhanced hearing picked up something that made his blood run cold, the high-pitched whine of a ship's self-destruct sequence charging up. Somewhere deep in the bowels of the bio-vessel, the bastards were going to try to take everyone with them. The silence that followed the last explosion was more deafening than the battle itself. 6 hours after the first human warship had dropped out of hyperspace, the Vexti pirate fleet existed only as glowing debris scattered across 3 light minutes of space. What had once been 200 alien vessels was now nothing more than twisted metal and cooling plasma. Drifting like the ashes of a cremated nightmare, Admiral Jack Reynolds stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the aftermath. Through the reinforced transparisteel viewport, the alien ships burned like funeral pyres against the infinite black. each flickering flame a testament to what happened when you mistook human diplomacy for human weakness. Every single human civilian had been rescued. Every single pirate was either dead or begging for mercy through the cum channels. Their arrogant voices now reduced to whimpering pleas in broken galactic standard. The rescue operation had been executed with surgical precision, not one innocent life lost. Not one hostage harmed in the crossfire. "Final casualty report, sir," announced Lieutenant Commander Sarah Walsh, her voice carrying a note of amazed disbelief. 0 human military deaths. 3 minor injuries from boarding operations. All civilian hostages recovered alive and receiving medical attention. 0 deaths. In a battle against overwhelming odds, facing an enemy that had been terrorizing the galaxy for centuries, humanity had achieved what military strategists would have called impossible. Not through luck or divine intervention, but through superior technology, better training, and the kind of cold, calculating fury that had carried the human species from cave dwellers to star conquerors. Reynolds nodded grimly.
Ow.
But there was no celebration in his expression. Victory meant nothing if the lesson wasn't learned by those who needed to learn it most. "Sir," Lieutenant Amy Carter called from her communications station, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council there. They're demanding we explain our excessive use of force. Excessive use of force." The words hung in the air like a bad joke, echoing in the minds of every human who'd heard the screams of dying civilians, who'd watched helplessly as families were torn apart by alien monsters. Reynolds felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. The same emotion that had driven humanity to survive every extinction event Earth had thrown at them, from ice ages to asteroid impacts to the rise and fall of entire civilizations. The Galactic Council. Those same alien bureaucrats sitting in their crystal towers on Coruscant Prime, debating the philosophical implications of military action, while human children were being butchered in the Outer Rim. The same council that had held 17 emergency sessions in the past month, each one ending with more committees and subcommittees and fact-finding missions, but never once with actual help for the people who needed it. Here's the thing about bureaucracy: it's a luxury that only exists when someone else is doing the dying for you. Easy to debate the ethics of warfare when your own kids aren't the ones being hunted like animals. Admiral Carter continued, her fingers dancing over her console as she decoded the full transmission. "They're also demanding we turn over any surviving Vexti prisoners for proper judicial processing according to galactic law." The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems and the distant crackle of cooling wreckage. Every human present understood exactly what proper judicial processing meant in the Council's bureaucratic paradise years of trials, appeals, rehabilitation programs. And eventually most of the pirates would be released back into space with stern warnings about their future behavior. Meanwhile, the families they'd murdered would still be dead. Reynolds turned away from the viewport, his face a mask of controlled fury that made several junior officers step back involuntarily. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of a man who'd spent 30 years learning that the universe respected strength and nothing else. "Lieutenant Carter, open a channel to all frequencies. Full spectrum broadcast across every communication network in the galaxy." "Sir," Carter's fingers hesitated. "Over her controls? That would be heard by every species, every government, every pirate organization, every criminal syndicate, and every two-bit warlord who thinks humans are easy prey," Reynolds finished. "Good. Let them all hear this." The communication. A ray powered up with a deep thrumming that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds and 10,000 space stations, alien beings would pause in their daily routines as the priority override signal cut through every other transmission. Admiral Reynolds stepped forward, his image being broadcast simultaneously to the Galactic Council chambers, the seediest cantinas in the Outer Rim, and the command bridges of every major fleet in known space. His voice, when it came, carried the cold authority of Earth's deadliest children. "This is Admiral Jack Reynolds of the Terran Fleet. 6 hours ago, The Vextai Pirate Syndicate made the mistake of hunting human civilians. As of this moment, the Vextai Pirate Syndicate no longer exists. The words rolled across space at light speed, carrying with them the weight of absolute finality. On worlds where slavery was still legal, masters found themselves looking nervously at their human captives. In pirate bases scattered throughout the outer territories, alien raiders began to realize that the newest members of the galactic community might not be the easy targets they'd assumed. Any organization, any individual, any government that targets human civilians will face the same fate, Reynolds continued, his voice never rising but somehow becoming more terrifying with each word. We don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't debate with murderers. We don't hold committee meetings while children die. He paused, letting the silence stretch across the void, giving time for translators to convert his words into 1,000. Alien languages. We exterminate them. The transmission cut to static, leaving nothing but the electromagnetic whisper of deep space and the slowly fading glow of alien ships that had learned too late what it meant to threaten humanity's young, but the message was far from over. Within hours, the footage would be spreading through the Galactic Information Network's high-definition recordings of human Reaper drones carving through alien formations like death made manifest of Marines moving through hostile corridors, with impossible precision of an entire pirate fleet reduced to scrap metal in less time than it took most species to file a formal complaint. Word spread through the galactic underworld like wildfire, carried by smugglers and information brokers, who understood that the balance of power had just shifted in ways that would reshape the entire galaxy. Earth's children had spoken, and their message was written in the cooling wreckage of those who'd thought humans were prey instead of predators. In the deepest corners of space, where the worst monsters made their homes, alien warlords found themselves facing a question they'd never had to consider before. Was whatever profit they might gain from attacking humans worth the risk of having their entire organization erased from existence? Most decided it wasn't. The smart ones. Anyway, the stupid ones would learn soon enough, because humanity had just announced to the galaxy that we didn't play by anyone else's rules, we wrote our own. And we enforced them with nuclear fire and righteous fury. Hunt us at your own extinction, the end.